All right, today we're diving into something called the Limitation Act. And I know, it sounds kind of dry, right? But trust me, it's not. Think of it more like the official rulebook for justice. And this rulebook has a ticking clock. It sets these super strict deadlines for when you can and can't go to court. The whole point is to make sure legal claims are brought while evidence is still fresh and, people can actually remember what happened. So, before a single argument is even heard in a courtroom, a judge has this mental checklist they run through. And guess what? Almost everything on it has to do with time. They're basically asking, did you show up on schedule? Because in the eyes of the law, believe me, timing is everything. So, how does a judge actually figure this all out? Well, they've got this pretty clear four-step process. First up, what's the cause of action? That's just a fancy legal term for, the actual reason you're in court. Step two, when did it happen? They need to pinpoint that exact moment. Then they look up the official time limit in the law books. And finally, they calculate the final deadline. It's this super important checklist to see if a case can even get off the starting block. Okay, I get it. These rules can feel a little abstract, right? So let's bring this down to earth with a real-world example. We're going to follow a simple story about a loan that goes wrong, just to see how this whole ticking clock thing actually works in practice. All right, let's meet our players. First, we've got Ghanshyam Kaka. He's our creditor, the guy who is owed money. And then there's Katak Singh, our debtor. Yep, he's the one who needs to pay up.
So, the deal is super simple. Katak Singh has to pay Ghanshyam his money back by December 20th. Now, you got to remember this date. It is incredibly important. Why? Because if Katak Singh doesn't pay by then, that failure to pay, that becomes the cause of action. It's the legal trigger that allows Ghanshyam to sue. And boom, that's the exact moment the law's clock officially starts ticking.
But, life is messy. It rarely goes according to plan. So let's throw our first major twist into the story. And this one comes straight out of Section 16 of the Act. So just imagine this. What happens if Ghanshyam, the guy waiting to get paid, actually passes away before the payment deadline even arrives? Is the whole thing off? Can the lawsuit even happen now? So in our story, that's exactly what happens. Tragedy strikes. Ghanshyam dies on December 16th, just 4 days before the money is due. So now, when Katak Singh, let's be honest, inevitably fails to pay on the 20th, who's left to sue him? Ghanshyam's gone. Well, the law actually has an answer for this. It's something called a legal representative. You can think of it as an heir or a family member, and they can basically step into Ghanshyam's shoes to file the lawsuit. But it's not always quite that simple. Because what if the only heir is, say, a 2-year-old child? I mean, come on, a toddler can't hire a lawyer, they can't navigate the court system. So does the law really start that ticking clock against a child who has absolutely no way to act? And this is where the law gets really, really interesting. It introduces this concept of a capable legal representative. See, the law isn't blind. It completely recognizes that some people, like kids, are legally incapable of fighting a lawsuit on their own. So here's the solution, and it's pretty brilliant. The law just hits pause on the clock. The countdown to sue doesn't start on the payment due date. Instead, the law waits. The clock will only start ticking on the day that 2-year-old child turns 18 and becomes a legal adult, someone who is fully capable of fighting for their rights. I mean, that's a really powerful measure of fairness, isn't it? Okay, so that's what happens when the plaintiff dies. But what happens if we flip the entire situation on its head? All right, let's reset the scene. Ghanshyam is alive and well. He's just waiting for his money on December 20th. But this time, it's Katak Singh, the debtor, who dies before the payment is due. So, who does Ghanshyam sue now? And this is where you see a huge difference in how the law handles things. Remember, for the plaintiff's heir, if they're incapable, the clock waits. But for the defendant's heir, the law is way stricter. That clock starts ticking on the due date, and it doesn't matter one bit if the heir is a 2-year-old or a 50-year-old. The clock starts. So why the different rule? Why so tough on the defendant's side? Well, it's all about protecting the creditor, Ghanshyam. I mean, his right to get paid shouldn't be stuck in limbo for 16 years just because the debtor's heir is a kid. To solve this, the court just steps in. It'll appoint a legal guardian to represent the child, and that allows the case to move forward without any delay. All right, let's add one final juicy layer of complexity to our story. This time, we're looking at Section 21 of the Act, which is all about what happens when you try to add new people to a lawsuit that's already started. So, picture this.
The lawsuit against Caddock's estate is chugging along. Years have gone by. The original time limit to sue, that's long gone. But then, Ghanshyam's heir discovers that a third person, maybe a business partner, was also on the hook for that original debt. So the big question is, can they add this new person to the lawsuit so late in the game?
Well, the law's default answer is a pretty firm no. You can't. I mean, think about it from this new person's perspective. For them, the lawsuit is just starting, and it's starting years after the deadline has already passed. If you could just add people willy-nilly, it would totally defeat the entire purpose of having these time limits in the first place.
But the law isn't totally heartless. There's a critical exception, a little what if, built on one simple idea. What if it was just a genuine good faith mistake? And this is the good faith exception. Basically, you can add a new party late if you can prove a few things to the court. One, you made an honest mistake by leaving them out. It wasn't some sneaky tactical move. Two, their presence is absolutely necessary to resolve the case fairly. And if you can do that, the court can use its discretion and say, okay, we'll allow it. It's like they can turn back time and treat that new person as if they were there from day one.
Okay, so we've gone through all these twists and turns, the plaintiff dying, the defendant dying, adding new people. What's the big picture here? What does all this tell us about the law and its, well, obsession with time? When you really look at it, the Limitation Act isn't just some cold, rigid stopwatch. It's actually a pretty dynamic system. Sure, deadlines bring certainty, which we need, but the law is smart enough to make exceptions for life's biggest curveballs, like death. It goes out of its way to protect the vulnerable, like a child heir. It's constantly trying to balance the rights of the person suing with the person being sued. And at the end of the day, it shows that fairness, through ideas like good faith, can actually override a rigid deadline. And that kind of leaves us with this one big thought to chew on, right? How can a law that's all about deadlines also be a law of second chances? It really shows that while justice definitely needs a clock to keep things moving, it also has to have a conscience. It has to know when to hit pause.